when I was little, I was diagnosed with ADD. And also, my grandfather came over from the Philippines when he was 14 years old during wartime. My other grandfather came over from Italy. They both built companies. So one built a company to take public, and then they taught my parents how to be entrepreneurial. And then my parents taught me how to be entrepreneurial. And so the immigrant's edge, but my grandfather said the exact same thing you said about going to Canada. From the Philippines to America, he said, I wanted to be in the land of my heroes. I wanted to be where freedom was. And we want to create that level of freedom, and there's an immigrant's edge to it that we have when it's like, I will do whatever it takes. And you'll push through the inner battles, the exterior battles, the challenges. I heard a quote recently from Brian Tracy who says you spend the first 50 years of your life healing from your first 5.
Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from downtown Prince George, British Columbia, Canada. And everybody around the world watching us is going to say, we know Canada, we know British Columbia, where's Prince George? Well, if you know Vancouver, beautiful, beautiful city, and then we are about 500 miles north of Vancouver, or 800 kilometers for our friends in Europe, and it's a beautiful, beautiful country here. Lots of trees, lots of nature. We got black bears, we got grizzly bears, we got caribou, we got, you name it, we have it here. All in short distance, all around us. In addition to that, we have within 50 miles probably 100 lakes, and it is paradise. That's how I look at it, and I love it here. I've been here for about 60 years. So today it's a very interesting guest. Her name is Staci Gray, and Organizing to Scale is an organization she started, and it's about structure around organizations, could be companies, and she is entrepreneurial. She's a very good speaker, very good interactive individual, doing a whole lot of things that have to do with successful coaching, accountability, leading people, and a whole lot of things around us. That's what this hour is going to be about, and many other things that come up along the way. Staci, welcome to my show.
Thank you, John. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to move to Canada now, or if we're supposed to be talking about normalizing the entrepreneurial journey, or all the amazing things that we get to grow through in our journeys in life.
I think I got your attention when I said what it looks like here, and you said,
Yes.
I wonder what I could do in Canada. Anyway, obviously we are friends, Canadians in the United States. They are two neighbors, very, very closely interactive. A lot of things that we are doing here, similar to the United States. We do a lot of business on either side of the border. For myself, I have a number of companies, and I produce lumber. We do a lot of our lumber sales in the U.S. South, Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth, and all those other kind of places. So there's a lot of interaction. So we have a lot of similarities.
Yes.
Share with us what you do. What does it mean, really, organizing to scale?
Yeah, so I started Organized to Scale because my mother was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer in 2015, and my father had several successful businesses, but he was working 24/7, 7 days a week, trapped in his business, and really needed to implement structure, systems, people, workflows, team, accountabilities, metrics for success. And he gave me a phone call and said, will you come run all of our companies so we can be there for his wife and my mother?
Yeah, sure.
And I said, of course I'll do it. And I came, and I'm an avid reader, so I had read over the years E-Myth and Traction and Measure What Matters and Speed of Trust and all Zig Ziglar books and John Maxwell books and leadership books and management books. And so I came in and I just whipped it all into shape, got it systematized, organized. And fortunately, the success of that allowed me to spend the last 18 months of my mom's life with her. And
Right.
she passed away in December of 2019. And then I was like, what do I do now? The systems are all running, the playbooks are good, the people are good, the businesses are stable, the profit margins have improved. And all of our clients at those family businesses were real estate investors, capital raisers, and entrepreneurs, small business owners in the real estate space and other industries. And they asked me to start helping them organize to scale their businesses. I didn't even know I had anything special. I didn't even know if I could organize to scale a bunch of strangers' businesses. I was like, well, if you want to give me a go, I'll give you a go. Let's see if it works.
Yeah.
That turned into 36 businesses in 36 months. That group of businesses raised 300 million. And I'm like, okay, I can really help people organize to scale their businesses. And my heart in it is really to restore dinner tables. I think so many people build businesses to create freedom, but then end up trapped in the very businesses designed to create that freedom. And I think it happens because of one of two reasons. One, we lack systems. So we don't have operational structures, we don't have playbooks, we don't have all of that. The other way that we get trapped is as visionary leaders, our passion consumes us. And what that looks like is we don't know how to say no to opportunity. We don't know how to scope and sequence. We get, I call it idea addicts, shiny penny syndrome, all of that. And we get out over our skis. And so a lot of what I like to do at Organize to Scale and with leaders is really help them organize to scale themselves so that they can organize to scale their businesses and build the what I call eyes open freedoms. So financial freedom, time freedom, location freedom, but also build their eyes closed freedom. Love, joy, peace, connection. And sometimes what we do when we're building and scaling businesses is we sacrifice our eyes closed freedoms for our eyes open freedoms. And we wake up one day and realize it's not a fair trade. And so I really want to normalize all of this struggle we go through as entrepreneurs and help people understand that you can build a business and maybe it's not going to have the massive number of zeros that you were thinking if you just were 24/7 in the business, but you're going to build a successful business and a beautiful life where you love your spouse and your spouse loves you. Your kids can count on you to show up at their soccer games, around the dinner table, and impart on them the wisdom that you've earned from building your business into their little minds and hearts so they can have courage to dream their dreams, go hustle after working towards something that means something to them, and really be proud of who they are in the process.
Interesting. So, what I connect here is organize themselves. That's where it starts. And
Yes.
then the other part, corrective me if I'm wrong, is that what I say a lot of times, we can become very efficient on being ineffective. So that all of a sudden that becomes an issue that we are very good at doing the wrong thing because we have always done it that way. And entrepreneurship is delicate. Combine it with, we already mentioned it earlier, ADHD and a number of other things that makes an individual potentially very good at creating things and so but once they create it and then want to make it something effective, it always keeps growing and growing and growing, and then all of a sudden there is no more time, and especially with entrepreneurs and CEOs, and I'm obviously quite involved, and I'm going to show guys or watches the book ADHD Unlocked is a book that I wrote. Is
Mm-hmm.
That you give me a little bit of background on me, and that makes it an interesting case for you to give me feedback on. So I'm nearly 84, and
You
so
look
the
amazing.
well, thank you. And so the and age is the is just a number. I saw something today, and I read The Economist. I'm quite effective, quite involved in business. So I saw The Economist uh, d- uh, document today on my desk, and it was this one. Can you see it?
Yes.
What does it
Yes.
mean? What does it mean? So that's what I say. I look at that and I said, I kind of have my idea about it, but what does it mean? What is the objective of The Economist to show this picture? I wonder. So and so I have an idea, and then I wrote another book that I just finished here. Just released it in the last couple of days, actually, and it is this one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That is living young, dying old. That's a picture of me, actually. I'm the oldest
Mm-hmm.
competitive bodybuilder in North America, and that is my how to thrive in your mid 80s. It says underneath it, just in case you can't read it. Is
Mm-hmm.
so, and then I look at this one again, and I say, what are they talking about here? I think they're talking about one guy that is 79 and another one that is 81. And then I
Mm-hmm.
say, and I'm talking about one that is 84.
Mm-hmm.
So
So you should be president. Is that what you're saying?
no, thank you. I watch it with interest, though.
Yes.
So the point that the point that I was going to make is that I was born in Holland in 1940 during the war years, and I have a bit of a story about that, but that's for another time, probably because we can talk about it for quite a while. I was not academically very successful. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times. And then
Mm-hmm.
they said, what are we going to do with this guy? And then some people said to my parents, oh, we'll send him to the mentally challenged school. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. So teach him a trade. And so I liked lumber. My dad liked lumber. My grandfather was a master carpenter. So they said, well, let's find him a job at 13 in the furniture factory. And then we'll make him a furniture maker. And at nights he can go to college. And I did that. I really enjoyed it. But we were liberated during the Second World War by the Canadian Army when I was 5. And April the 12th, 1945, I was so impressed by it that I knew my dream was to go to the land of my heroes, Canada. I was trying to go when I was 17, but then was drafted into the Dutch Air Force. And then finally I did go when I was 23. And I wanted to start with nothing, right from the ground up. Couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, didn't have a job. And I
Mm-hmm.
took a suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I wanted to go to British Columbia. That's where all the trees are. And I wanted to build a lumber mill to prove to me that I was just as smart as the other guys, girls that were in the 7th grade with me that went to college, university, and I became a laborer. I'm proud of that today, but I wasn't then, obviously, and I kind of struggled with it. And so I
Yeah.
went to Canada, landed in Montreal first, took the train across Canada, then arrived in Vancouver, went to the immigration office, and fortunately there was a German fellow, I could speak some German, and said to him what I wanted to do. I wanted to build a lumber mill. He said, go to Prince George. That's a boom town, and it's really booming, and that's where the opportunities are. So I went on the bus, Greyhound bus, for about 12, 13 hours, and arrived in Prince George. I can still, 60 years later, that's where the Greyhound station landed, about 2 or 3 blocks from here. And there I was with my suitcase, 3 books, 2 sets of clothes, and I was, and I counted my money, and I counted it at least 3 times. I had $25.47. But what I did have lots of is attitude. I'm always positive.
Mm-hmm.
I avoid negative. Passion.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever I do, I give it 120%. And then work ethic. I work harder than anybody, even now at nearly 84. I get up at 5:30 in the morning. I always make my bed. I always think I'm late, and I'm always in a hurry. and so what changed my life is coming to Canada. The other thing that changed my life is that I walked into, after I was already here for more than 30 years, and I had built all kinds of businesses, and everybody said, oh, you're so successful, and I didn't feel that way. I still felt I had failed. And so then by coincidence, I walked into a store in 1997, and and I picked up a book, and the title of the book was Driven to Distraction. This is the actual book that I picked up, written by Dr. Halliwell. And he wrote the book in 1993, and I wrote inside this in Dutch. Now I finally know who I am. And it was about ADHD, and I started to read more and more about it, and the more I read about it, and the more I got to know it, and I wrote it in Dutch because there was a stigma attached to it, implying that it was a mental disorder of some description. The more I read about it, the more I know it's a superpower. And so for me, it became very... Now, the other part interesting about it, I just want to share this with you, and then you can put it into your interaction, is that you're my podcast 284. So Dr. Halliwell wrote this book in 1993. He's written 18 other books. He is dyslexic, but also ADHD. I'm also dyslexic, ADHD. And I bought the book in 1997, and I had him on my podcast. My podcast episode is 203, On the Brink. And so we had an interview about me, him, and his book. And I suggested to him, at least he's the expert, that I felt initially thinking 8% about the population, ADHD. I believe it was much higher than that, in around 20%. So I suggested that to Dr. Halliwell. He said, no, John, it's more than 25%. I agree with him. Now, the other part, and here's the interesting part, I believe that with all the things that I've done, I've been involved in organizations, board of directors, and all. I'm not trying to be important. I'm simply saying I've seen it all. And that I believe that with successful, and the operative is successful, entrepreneurs or CEOs, at least 50% of them are ADHD. And I suggested that to Dr. Halliwell. He said, no, John, at least 75%. And I agree with him. So, so that's where we are. And then they say to me, with all the things, even at my age, I got all these companies, I'm doing lots of podcasts and lots of writing. I'm working on my 6th and 7th book, 5th and 6th book right now, and doing all of that. But it all started after I knew I had ADHD. So when I was 57, I went to the store, picked up that book, and said, oh my God, that's me. Got to find out about it. It took me 5 years before I went to my doc, a personal friend, delivered our 2 daughters, and I walked into his office and he said, hey, John, why are you here? I said, I think I got ADHD. So we checked it out. Yes, I do. And so that kind of opened the door for me after 50 years, leaving
Mhm.
school at 13, and then,
Mhm.
then at 62, finding out ADHD, and then from that point forward, I started to become much more active, public speaking, giving keynotes all over the place, writing books, starting my company started to grow and expand much further than they had before, and then obviously podcasting and all the other things that we do. And a lot of people say to me now at nearly 84, how do you do it all? How do you do it all? I said ADHD, that's how I do it.
Oh, I have so many comments. And if you have a question, you can ask me it. But if not, I will just give you. Okay.
Go for it.
So first, I see you like so clearly. The inner world that one has to go through to reconcile and then become congruent and create from there is such a beautiful journey that you have been on, that you're doing, and you're inspiring others to do. So I just have to honor and acknowledge you for that, because it's a brave journey to go on. When I was little, I was diagnosed with ADD. And also, my grandfather came over from the Philippines when he was 14 years old during wartime. My other grandfather came over from Italy. They both built companies. So one built a company to take public, and then they taught my parents how to be entrepreneurial. And then my parents taught me how to be entrepreneurial. And so the immigrant's edge, but my grandfather said the exact same thing you said about going to Canada. From the Philippines to America, he said, I wanted to be in the land of my heroes. I wanted to be where freedom was. And we want to create that level of freedom, and there's an immigrant's edge to it that we have when it's like, I will do whatever it takes, and you'll push through the inner battles, the exterior battles, the challenges. I heard a quote recently from Brian Tracy who says you spend the first 50 years of your life healing from your first 5. And when you said that you started your businesses at 57, if we look historically, a lot of the successful entrepreneurs, they didn't start it until after they were 40 or 50. And there's an integration period, I think, that takes place. And you're much older than me, and I think I'm in an integration period in my life right now. And you collect so much wisdom in 0 to 50, 0 to 30, 0 to 40. There's so much wisdom. And then it's like almost a light bulb goes off, and you get to know this wisdom that you didn't know you had comes into our conscious awareness. And when that happens, the creation is coming from a place of complete whole. I know who I am. I'm clear in my identity, and this is my gift to the world. Whereas a lot of some of the 0 to 50 creation is I have something to prove. But you have nothing to prove anymore. When you get to the seat in yourself where you're whole and you're complete, and you know, like, this superpower that I have, that my whole life I thought was a demon that I was trying to slay, but it's the thing that gives me the gift to create something magical in the world that's going to draw out the inner warrior in every human being and touch it. That is special. And I feel like that's what you've done. It's what you're doing with your books. And it's an inspiration to the next generation of entrepreneurs and the next generation of leaders that need to know that there's a place for grit. There's a place for resilience. There's a place for mental toughness. And there's a place for love and gentleness and peace. And we need to integrate both of those, because we can't sacrifice ourselves for winning, but we can't bulldoze people to win either. And so this collaboration that I think is getting united in the entrepreneurial community is beautiful, and you're definitely advocating for it with what you're doing. So everything you shared is just so beautiful, and I just want to mirror it back to you because I see parallels in my whole life as well.
The other part, Stacy, is to get to, and I agree with all the things that you say, that's how long it took, 50 years to unlock. And it came for me walking into a store for, I don't know why, I picked up the book and it said click. And then the
Mhm.
other part is that, still struggling with the past, PTSD
Mhm.
from the war years, seeing
Yeah.
far too much that we should not have seen. And the fear, my dad was drafted into the Dutch army in April of 1940. My mother was pregnant with me. I had a brother and sister, 1 and 2 years older than
Mm.
me. For 5 years, they wouldn't know if he was dead or alive, and so she was on her own, So that was difficult, and
Yeah.
so and 80 and the inner child was. I got counseling for it actually in my 50s
Yeah.
here, very emotional, So,
Yeah.
but all of
My
that.
I want to, if I my grandmother who was raised in the war years too, um she said when you can clearly see something is wrong, something's not right in the world, people are unwell, when you can clearly see something's wrong and for whatever reason the solution is out of reach, she said all you can do is grieve. And when you got to 50 and you got to do that inner child work, you got to grieve. You got to grieve the childhood you didn't get. You got to grieve the mother that she couldn't be for you because she was living in wartime and she was being traumatized by things that she should have never been traumatized by. And you get to grieve that. And what happens, I feel like, is they say 5 to 10% of our minds is conscious. The other 95% is subconscious. That means that human beings are walking around with this visceral experience in their bodies that is traumatizing because it's not okay for us to treat each other the way we've been treating each other. And all violence is hurt disguised. And we have so many people that are hurting right now. And we just need to grieve. We need to cry because it's not okay, the things that happen. And it's not, and we need to say enough is enough, not on my watch. It's stopping in this generation. And we are going to be having homes and communities and neighborhoods that are peaceful and kind and loving, and you can walk outside and you can say hello to your neighbor and not be afraid. That's the world we can create, and we can all do that because all we are doing, it's a psychological construct. We, each person is creating a psychological construct, and when we create a peaceful, loving, kind psychological construct for ourselves, to hold ourselves with compassion, then we go out into the world and that's what we create. That's what we create in our businesses. That's what we create in our books. That's what we create in conversations. And we need more of that. So we need more people doing the healing work that you're talking about and grieving what should have never happened and letting it go and embracing a brighter future because we can have it. Together, we all can have it.
I agree with you. So the other thing that happened, Staci, is that in the process, doing all the things that I did when I came here in July of 1965 with my $25.47, didn't have a job, couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul. I started as cleanup man and a number of other things, but very quickly I became successful and I became a supervisor, first cleanup man, then a supervisor, then a superintendent. And within 2.5 years, I owned a piece of a little sawmill. And then within 10 years, I started a company called the Brink Group of Companies. It's 10 different companies. And it's not about that right now, but and I wrote a book about that actually, Against All Odds. It's about all the
Mm,
ups and downs. I'm going to send copies of these books to you. I'm going to sign them for
I would
you.
love that.
And so, but the one challenge that I had all along is, although I was very good at my businesses, is that I was not very good at communicating. Was self-conscious, and I could do with about 3 or 4 people around my company, but outside of that, I was not very good at communications at all until something again, coincidental things happened that unlocked that. And so I had an ex-sister-in-law actually that talked me into say, hey John, I want to take you to Toastmasters. And I said, what is it? And he said, they teach you about communication skills, and I said, are they going to ask me any questions? They said, no, just sit down and you just watch what they are doing and maybe you like it and you can go there and we'll help you. And And I said, okay, I'll go then. And so halfway through the meetings, they said, hey, John, tell us all about you. And I said, oh my God, I'll never go back here. But I did. I stayed there for about 10 years and then became a distinguished Toastmaster, which is the highest level in Toastmasters. And for a guest watching us from around the world, there is probably, I would say, Toastmaster clubs all around North America, but also in Europe. Here in Prince George, we have probably 4 or 5 different clubs, and the focus of the clubs is communicating. But first and foremost about Toastmasters, what I say, is become a good listener, and then being able to speak on your feet and feel confident, and you go through processes to enhance that. And probably there are, as we speak, probably 500,000 people around North America and in other places that are actively involved in Toastmasters. There have probably been 10 million people that have gone through different levels of Toastmasters and benefited from it, and probably less than 1% of them go all the way to become a distinguished Toastmaster. I did. I'm proud of it. And, and it changed my life. No question about that. And that was from the 10 years that I was there up to 2000. So between the Canadians liberating us, it changed my life. Then the Toastmasters in 1990 to 2000 changed my life. 1997, picking up the book Driven to Distraction changed my life. And the accumulation of all of that and all the things that I did is what I usually say to people, is that becoming at peace with who you are is critically important. And it took me that long until I did. And it comes back to what you were saying earlier and all the experiences that you have. So once you get to that point, then you can then become an effective communicator, both in speaking, doing keynotes, writing books. And then the other thing that had a major effect on me, still does today, is discovering podcasting. Although I was already involved in blogging and doing stuff before COVID, and mainly on a local level, in a regional level, and then COVID came, and I was working with a television station here, and we couldn't do that anymore. And then we said, what do we do now? Well, I had an apartment here, one apartment that I bought as an investment, and said, well, maybe we'll create a studio here. And so we did. Did again, mainly local, regional stuff, and then as the numbers wound up, and then although we have a lot of talent here, then I thought maybe I have to set up, and I had another apartment in Vancouver, maybe set up another studio there. But then the more we thought about it, and the more we watched the television stations, CNN, ABC, and all the other ones that we all watch, you see then virtual, you see 1, 2, 3 different people from all across the world, and say, maybe what we should do is more virtual. And that's what we are doing today. We are podcasting around the world, and having amazing conversations like you and me do, Staci. How otherwise would we have ever met if not through this forum? And it's only what I suggest, and I believe you would agree with me, it's only at the beginning, because this is the start of precisely what you and me are talking about, it having those years, the 50 years, 60 years before us, now come to the place where we are at peace with who we are, and now we can give back to society and have the ability between writing and communicating, and obviously you become very, very skilled in that, and discovering your talents in terms of finding, as you say, is creating the to-scale organization, and it's only the beginning. That is such a demand for it, and it creates unbelievable opportunity.
Yeah, I agree. I personally just started a podcast about 6 months ago, myself as well, and I love the conversations that I'm able to have with people from all over the world. And what I find, and you could tell me if you find this too, humans are very similar. We slay some of the same demons in our heads. We have some of the same struggles with communication with our relationships. We struggle with getting ourselves to say what we're going to do, follow through on it. We struggle with maintaining peace and balance and harmony. We all have similar struggles. And in a way, some of social media has been used to shame each other for not being perfect. And now I think we're waking up and we're realizing there's a gift in all the imperfection. There's growth in all the imperfection. It's where we get to bond and connect and create connection in a way that's so meaningful, and not just meaningful, but healing. It's how we heal. We heal in relationship. We heal together. And the fact that we're able to do it virtually doesn't negate needing to do it also in person. I love giving somebody a hug, heart to heart, and feeling them. But we can do this too, and it's what the world needs. The world needs us to heal out loud. If we have gone through struggle, if we've had ADD, or we've had coping mechanisms that haven't been healthy for us, or we're workaholics, or we've numbed in any way, I like to say every human being reaches a point in their life that they say, enough is enough. I cannot keep operating like this. And it could be something big, like you had a financial crisis, a health crisis, a relationship crisis, or it could be a quiet moment where you pick up a book and you're like, oh my gosh, the light bulb just turned on. Now I know that there's a better future. And we all hit that enough is enough point. And what that moment is, it's the inciting moment for a big transformation. And there's a great book called Managing Transitions, and it talks about the transformation process and how when we get to an enough is enough moment and we need to make a change, we have to grieve the loss of the way the life was in order to open our hearts to embrace the life we can create. And when we open our hearts to create the life that we want to create, this could be in business, this could be in relationship, it's unknown. And if it was known, we would be following somebody else's path. And when it's unknown, we're braving our own trail. We're pioneering it in our own heart. We're doing it our way because we have a collection of ADD, all these things, all these numbing things we've done up until the enough is enough. And then we get to integrate it. And then we get to say we get to create something new and move into that with a level of faith. And I find the enough is enough moment is a critical moment because that is the moment the light bulb goes off and you have a choice. You can choose to numb, go back to overworking, overindulging, isolating, all the things you did to keep yourself safe. You can go back there. Or I call it kneel. So you hit your enough is enough and you can numb or you can kneel. And kneeling it to me is not religious. It's saying I'm surrendering to the natural flow of things. I'm not going to force a life. I'm not going to force an identity. I'm not going to force a way of being on myself that isn't working. That's just creating hostility inside of my own psyche. I'm going to start creating a world that is beautiful, and I'm going to plant seeds of hope, and I'm going to plant seeds of prosperity and growth and connection and love, and then water it. Every single day I'm going to water it, and I'm going to have a positive attitude, and I'm going to see the glass full, not just half full or half empty, but I'm going to see it full. This is all happening for me. And then lean into that and brave that trail, because when you do, like you are, you're inspiring everybody else who hits their enough is enough moment to turn the light on and keep shining it as they walk the rest of their journey. And you're doing it.
Yeah, and I love it because and at the same time, I look back at from the time I was 13, it took me 50 years with ADHD to find out, and and since I've become aware of it, seen so many situations where people are adversely affected by it, and I'm trying to change the message and saying, if I can do it, anybody can do it, and taking them all the way through. The warriors were not easy, and saw far too much that we should not have seen, and especially the winter of 1944-45, where the three of us, the three kids, would go every morning with gunny sacks out in the railroad yards, picking up anything edible and burnable, because it was the coldest winter on record and we had no food. I can still feel the feeling of
Yes.
hunger, even
Yeah.
virtually 80 years later, and the feeling of cold, all of those kind of things. But going through all of that and then getting to the point after I was 60 and all of a sudden reconciling through circumstances, all of that gave me peace as to who I
Mm.
am, and then at the same time an obligation to give back and being
Mhm.
feeling free to talk about it, all the
Yeah.
imperfection and all the things that happened. Ends my book Against All Odds. I write about everything there,
Mhm.
and so, but if I can do it, anybody can do it more or less, and saying that reconcile it and interact with others and giving back about my experience of growing up in Holland and then having to acquire a new language when you came here and then becoming a writer, successful one, and doing all the other things. It gives me the feeling of giving back, and that to me
Mhm.
is the most important one.
I'm curious. I have some thoughts on this too, but you hit your enough is enough and you are searching for answers, right? And you pick up this book and you feel like, "Oh, this is it." I asked my grandparents, "What time in history does right now most remind you of?" Both my grandfather that came over from the Philippines and my grandmother who went to Stanford wasn't allowed to wear pants. She was only allowed to wear skirts. This was 1959, not that long ago. Um, when I ask them what time in history does right now most remind them of, they say 1945. And that was wartime. That was when people, like you said, you can feel in your body hunger. You can feel in your body something's not right. If this is true, I'm not saying it is, but if there are parallels to then and now, I feel like we're a little bit more cush now than we were then, but I didn't live then. What do you think, if people are hitting this, what do you think you would want to tell them? Like going back to the when you were searching, what would you want them to know? Like, but besides, like tactically, not like you can do it, but this is what I would have done.
I think the most important part of life is to realize that how fortunate and lucky we are living in North America. And as I said before, flying around a lot here, the land of opportunity, and I'm not talking just Canada, but the United States, and flying around that and looking outside and saying it's paradise. And then, but a lot of people don't realize, and I say this respectfully, is that war is not, there is war, and after the war is over, everything goes back to normal. That's simply not the way it is. It may take
Mhm.
generations for even to
Mhm.
get back there. And
Mhm.
I've seen that. I've seen, what Hitler did as a dictator.
Mhm.
And so if I look around the world now, I agree with what it reminds me of in a way is right after the Second World War. I look at Europe, I look at the Ukraine, I look at the Middle East, I look at places like Venezuela, Cuba, North Korea, China, Russia, and all around us. It is so
Mhm.
fragile. And then we sometimes think that I like the democratic process, the freedom of choice, and then a lot of people don't realize what that really means versus dictatorship, because if
Mhm.
that is where we would go at some point, then we look at Russia, North Korea, Venezuela, where in the middle of the night, no different than what happened during the Second World War. We had people in our street, they knocked on their door, they would never see him again. And
Right.
so that happened all the time. And so that it reminds me of the one thing that I forget now the name of the person that said that, when during the Second World War, living in Germany, they were doing that. First, it was the Catholics, and then it was the gypsies, they took him away, and I watched it and I said nothing. And then the next one was the Jews. They took him away, and I stood by and said nothing. And now they knocking on my door. There is nobody left anymore to speak up. And so the point that I'm making is that being proactive is good, and the democratic system may not be perfect, but it's the best we have, and it has served us well. Sometimes I feel that it is very, very dangerous and very, very delicate as to where we are. And a lot has to do with that. I was there, and I lived and was born during a dictatorship that was ruthless and killed millions and millions and millions of people. And it's always close by, and it's very, very fragile. And so what I'm saying is that speak up, speak out, and our systems may not be perfect, but it's better than the alternative.
Mhm. I feel like when you talk about the wartime, energetically feel that it's like the body didn't get a chance to exhale. Like it's almost like wartime makes you just like freeze, and then you just grit and bear it and endure it. And then in hindsight, you can say, gosh, I wish I would have spoken up. I wish I would have said something about the injustice that was happening. But I was so frozen in fear or frozen in uncertainty or doubt that I was not in my vessel, my human body was not in a condition to speak up. And
Or
I think,
thinking it does not affect me, so
or thinking, okay,
yeah.
I think though, like for me, I'm finding more courage to talk about these things and say like there's some parallels here. There's some things that we should have our eyes open to. And a way that helps me to get there is breath work, because I spend a lot of time doing breath work just to relax my body so I can have the courage to speak about things that people don't want to talk about, or it's going to be polarizing. You're going to always piss somebody off. You're not going to win.
Yeah.
Somebody's going to be mad at you for what you say. And so that, going back to what we talked about earlier, having such clarity in your identity, when somebody says something to you that's like, well, you shouldn't think that way, or you shouldn't speak out about that, you can say, okay, well, that could be true, and I'm sorry that it triggered you. And I also feel empowered and encouraged to speak out because I'm coming at it from a seat of being clear on who I am, and I don't have a choice anymore to sit by the sidelines, because I will lose my soul. If I sit on the sidelines, I will die. I will be here, but my soul won't be in my body. And I think we have a whole wave of people, myself included, that we need to have our souls in our bodies, and we need to start having conversations with each other like you and I are having, saying there is some injustice in the world. There's something wrong. We can do something about it. And it's not all bad. There's still good things. Look, I mean, we're having this conversation. That's beautiful. If we can turn on some gratitude and appreciation and that positive attitude, and then ignite that passion in us about this is who I am, this is where I'm going, I have something to share. And then your plaque is perfect, that work ethic. Then get after it. This is where the dreamer in us and the doer in us have to meet. And when those two meet, we get work done.
Exactly. So it brings me kind of back to what I showed you at the beginning. You must have thought, who is this guy? So I picked this up from my desk this morning, and I looked at this, and I said, I know what it means. It suggests that likely if you are over 80, then you need help to walk. And then I say, okay, what happened here then? So I'm the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. I'm nearly 84. And the point that I'm making, the reason that I wrote this book is simply saying that there is more and more discussion about longevity and quality of life. And again, there was a trigger in my life that, my wife is vegetarian. I was not, this doesn't come as a surprise to you, not always a good listener, and I was okay, but not quite the way I should have been. And so then I got a case of diverticulitis, is where you had a rupture of your colon, and it became a rupture in my case, and that is very delicate because all the toxins affect your organs, and you have a limited amount of time to fix it. Otherwise, it could be very, very serious, may even kill you. So I came about that close, and so at that point, I knew I had to do something in a more serious way, not like we all do in a way. At year end, we can say, I'm going to do this, that, and the other thing. I'm going to buy a membership to a gym. And then we go there for 2 weeks, and then we find 100 reasons as to why we're too busy, can't go there anymore. And so I knew I had to do something about that. And me being me, I knew I had to get a trainer, because once it becomes an appointment, I always am effective on meeting my appointments, and so and I got one, and then after I did that for about 6 years seriously, somebody came up to us, my trainer and myself, and said, "Hey John, have you ever thought about competing?" I said, "Me? Really?" And he said, "Yeah." And so I did, and so I started then going to the gym more, and so I started competing then to shows, bodybuilding and physique in 2017, and came in second bodybuilding, third in physique, and that qualified me for the provincials, and then it qualified me for the nationals and the Arnolds. And then obviously COVID happened, and now again I'm still going to the gym, still training for 2025, where I'm going again to the Arnolds, and I've been contacting Arnold, and I want him on my podcast, but he hasn't shown up yet because I want to tell him I'll be back.
I love it.
So what I'm doing, tongue in cheek a little bit, but I'm doing, I go to the gym right after this podcast. I'm in the gym again, and then at the same time, I'm a vegan now. I listen much better to my wife about what is good for me and what isn't. So I'm very careful about diet. That's what the book is all about. It's saying that, the longevity and quality of life. Age 83, 84 is just the number. It's all about quality of life, and that usually means that diet is extremely important, sleep is important, exercise is important. All those elements, I say it's all in the book. I'll send you a copy of it. I'm going to sign it for you. But and then at the same time, you feel much better. Like even at nearly 84, I'm still busy. I do lots and lots of things, and obviously podcasting is one of them, and sharing with the rest of the world, even those things around quality of life and everything is possible.
Yeah. I saw this quote the other day, is life about the journey or the destination? And the answer was the company. Who you go with on the journey is the point. And exactly. you nailed this when you said, when I wanted to do bodybuilding or when I wanted to get in shape, I got a trainer. Exactly. And as I know, I'll keep my appointment. Yes. And when I was going through a deep healing process, one of my mottos or quotes was, if you want to be responsible, keep your promises to others. If you want to be successful, keep your promises to yourself. Exactly. And I find keeping my promises to myself goes up when I include an accountability partner in it.
Exactly.
So I think that this is helpful to your audience. I think the biggest transformation for me in my life has been when I've gotten to any enough is enough moment is to ask myself, who can walk this next path with me? And then find that who and have them walk with you, because you'll be able to endure things you didn't think you could endure. You'll have ahas you didn't know that you needed to have. Blind spots will be eroded. Your courage, your grit, your energy, your positivity will increase And then together, that's going to be transformative inside of your business, inside of yourself, at your dinner tables, and the world at large. And then next thing you know, you're going to be 84 years old, bodybuilder, 5 books, podcast, and on your crusade.
Yeah, so the other thing about it, Stacy, and so an hour is far too short for us. We need to do this again, you know.
Yes,
But
but
I quickly want to touch at this is that what I thought about you in particular, organizing to scale, where you walk in as a trained set of eyes and you recognize a number of things that it needs a new look, and then from there on in starting to look at all steps, and in particular people, is that all of a sudden because things become far too big, and then the wrong people in the wrong places. That is one thing, it's very costly, but the other part about it is they have to make decisions, which become even more costly. And then, so what I usually say, cream always comes to the top, and every so often you have to stand back and look at your organization and saying, are we going in the right direction? What are we doing? How are we going about it? And making hard decisions is sometimes difficult. Now, the other part about it is that what I find is that, and I'm aware of that, people with ADHD are very, very good at getting things started. But so, and the best organizations are the ones that are boringly consistent in terms of producing results, but they're not very good for the owner ADHD individual, because then it becomes boring. And they always looking for new opportunity, so that create challenges for them. And I'm well aware of it. That's a benefit, but also can be a liability in a sense. But
yeah. So if you or someone listening is hitting a ceiling in their business, they feel like they're living in operational chaos, their business looks like their kitchen junk drawer, they have the wrong people in the wrong seats, they feel like it's just they're drowning in operational chaos. Your point is spot on. I think you're right. We have to step out of the chaos to have a transcendent view of the situation in order to resolve it. And so what we do is we go through a 3-step process. Step 1 is architect. You have to architect the type of business you want. What's the business blueprint? And then you have to build the foundation and the infrastructure to operate that business. And then step 3 is operate. You have to plug people and playbooks in place to run the day-to-day. So most visionary leaders hate the operate phase. I don't want to do the mundane. I'm not following a checklist. Checklist is just an idea. It's not something to be followed and checked off. That's what a visionary thinks. So you don't plug a visionary into the operate phase. A visionary is great at the architect phase. They can see the front of the puzzle box. They can see it in 3D. They can see it in color. They know what they want it to look like. But the second that box gets dumped out and there's pieces all over the board, they're like, I'm out. Like, somebody else come in here and do it, and then I'll come back and I'll stare at it and pat myself on the back for having the idea. That's a visionary. That's why pairing a visionary with an integrator, somebody who can build it and then lead, manage, and hold accountable the team to operate it, that's where magic starts happening. And we've seen this. Apple, Steve Wozniak and Steve Jobs. We've seen it in Walt Disney and Roy. Who else? You say. So many people.
yeah, yeah. Microsoft, same thing, and then even looking at Zuckerberg, looking at the Amazon, so and on and on and on, and the examples are plentiful, and the key is always to make the hard, tough decisions, and having to go in the right direction and get the right people involved that have that ability to have vision. What I found is that one of my strongest part has always been in business, right from the time that I was young, is being able to see forward in terms of making decisions, even now still, although my companies have been in existence for the last 50 years. I can look at my business plan from 50 years ago, and it is still very similar. A lot of people look at it and say, I can't believe it is still similar than it is today. but still very growth oriented, and obviously, but it's now changing for me in a lot of ways, looking at the opportunities at podcasting, but beyond that, in terms of the media, looking at platforms that go in that direction. Very interesting for me.
Yes. Yeah. I love the direction you're going and all that you're doing with your businesses, and getting untrapped from them as a visionary is critical, because when you're stuck in the chaos and you're doing all the nitty gritty and it's not your zone of genius or your sweet spot, it will energetically drain you. And when you're energetically drained by the things that you're doing every single day, how you start showing up as a leader deteriorates. You start being shorter with your team. You start making impulsive decisions. You start struggling to see the chessboard or think 5 moves ahead. And so part of the process in architect is being brutally honest with yourself. Like, what do I even want out of this company? What do I want to spend my time doing? What kind of lifestyle do I want? Am I building this to exit it, or am I building it to pass it to my kids? What are we doing here? And then once you get brutally honest at that, and it starts with the founder or the leader, the primary leader, once you get brutally honest, the rest is easy because you have so much clarity. The thing is we dance around being brutally honest. That's why I say you can't organize and scale your business unless you organize and scale yourself. And it starts with that deep-rooted conversation that we don't want to have, but we need to have.
Yeah, I agree with you. Staci, have you got internet contact points that people can contact you at? And then can you share with us your podcast, how to connect to your podcast online, and maybe make that available to us, or maybe you want to tell us? And then for all the people that have been watching us, obviously sharing with all the people watching us from around the world, is that our time is far too short. We will be talking to Staci again for another conversation, maybe in 6 months from now. We'll contact you again. And in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast, both Staci's and mine, on very, very interesting topics that deal with all those things that help with clarity and being honestly very truthful about being honest with ourselves, come to peace with ourselves, especially if we aspire to entrepreneurship or struggling with companies, or the world is all one and on the media. And so subscribe to our podcast, share it with others, like it, and give us feedback. And Staci, it was a privilege and a pleasure to have you on my podcast. Let's make sure we stay in touch. I think Scott has your contact point. I will send you copies of all my books, and let's make sure we stay in touch.
I love it. Thank you so much for having me on, and I look forward to connecting with anyone that this resonated with. I'm Staci Gray everywhere, STACIGRAY. And if you're trapped in your business and feeling lost, there is a path forward.
I love it, Staci. You take care now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.